Welcome back to News in Focus. One of the big stories of today, that is former Deputy Finance Minister Mcebisi Jonas has been appointed as the first of President Cyril Ramaphosa's special envoys to the United States as the country continues to come under attack from President Donald Trump's administration. Ramaphosa said that Jonas would be responsible for advancing South Africa's diplomatic, trade and bilateral priorities. Joining us now, I'd like to welcome Dr. Sizo Nkala from the University of Johannesburg Center for Africa-China Studies. Dr. Nkala, thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
Thank you for having me, and greetings to the viewers.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Dr. Nkala, given the fragility between Washington and Pretoria, in your view, is this seen as a sensible appointment?
I think it's a sensible appointment. It's quite necessary in the circumstances because the relationship still has to go on. They have to, the two countries have to establish some lines of communication despite their well-publicized differences. So the appointment reflects the seriousness with which the South African government takes the relationship with the US. But when it comes to the person appointed, though, I'm not sure if it was the best appointment. Of course, Mcebisi Jonas has a pedigree in terms of administration, in terms of international experience, having been the Deputy Minister of Finance and also served as the presidential envoy for investment. But at this point in time, I would have expected that someone more neutral would be appointed because Mcebisi Jonas has got deep roots within the ANC. He was a member of the Black Consciousness movement. He was also a member of the Umkhonto weSizwe movement. So I think his ideology must be close to that of the former ambassador Ibrahim Matul. So I'm not sure if that appointment will work, and also his appointment as a special envoy rather than an ambassador. I think it reflects President Ramaphosa's willingness to control the narrative because he will be reporting directly to the president. So I think the president wants to be close to the processes there and control the narrative with regards to the relationship with the US.
Here's the thing, Dr. Nkala. President Ramaphosa says diplomatic, trade and bilateral. I want to touch on diplomatic because it's frosty. It's as frosty as it ever has been. You've got, of course, AfriForum who have made these trips to Washington to go ahead and create this narrative of a quote-unquote white genocide. Donald Trump himself said it when he had presented the Liberation Day tariff hikes, that things are not going well in South Africa. And then, of course, over the weekend, Donald Trump says, well, I don't think I'm going to pitch up for the G20 Leaders Summit at the end of this year. I mean, Jonas has got quite a challenge on his hand, doesn't it, to try and go ahead and convince Washington that this narrative that was created by AfriForum is something that is not a reflection of what is currently happening in the United States of America.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult task for Mcebisi Jonas because on the one hand, he has to compete with groups like AfriForum. We also know that the Democratic Alliance has been to the US as well, peddling its own narrative. So he has to compete for the ear of the Trump administration with these groups. So that complicates his task. So further complicating his mission is the Trump administration's commitment to peddling this fictitious narrative on South Africa regarding land confiscation and the so-called white genocide. So despite being corrected, Trump is sticking to this narrative. So I wonder if Mr. Jonas will be able to convince the Trump administration otherwise. And then thirdly, it seems the US wants to forge a relationship with South Africa on its own terms. The relationship comes with conditions of South Africa changing its domestic policies when it comes to the Expropriation Act, the Land Reform Program, the Black Economic Empowerment Act, and also when it comes to South Africa's foreign policy, it's growing close relations with China, with Iran, and its leadership in the ICJ case against Israel. So these are conditions that the Trump administration is setting if it is to continue its relationship with South Africa. So I don't think Mcebisi Jonas will manage to convince the US to drop these conditions. So it's quite a difficult task ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, one of these conditions, of course, are this current 30% tariff hikes that are currently on the go for South Africa. Of course, they have been paused when it comes to that. But here's the thing, Dr. Nkala, is that AGOA, which is, of course, something that South Africa is really trying to hang its hat on when it comes to this trade agreement between South Africa and the United States. That's another challenge in itself, isn't it, Dr. Nkala, to try and make sure that South Africa is still within the mix when it comes to AGOA?
Well, when it comes to AGOA, the future is really bleak, especially for South Africa that has about 8 billion trade surplus with the United States. To Donald Trump, that is a cardinal sin. If you have a trade surplus with the United States, it means that you are ripping the United States off in Donald Trump's language. So it makes South Africa's future in the AGOA setup quite uncertain because of the 10% tariff, the baseline tariff that has been imposed, and also the 31% tariff, reciprocal tariff imposed on South Africa. Although it has been paused for 90 days, it's uncertain whether it will be reinstated again after 90 days. Also, I mean, South Africa exports automobiles, about $2 billion, $3 billion automobiles to the United States. So we know that 25% tariffs have been imposed on the automobiles coming to the United States. So South Africa's future in AGOA is up in the air right now. In any case, I do not think that AGOA will be renewed because it's anti-American according to the Trump ideology. It shouldn't have been signed in the first place. And then the fact that I've never heard Trump addressing the African Growth and Opportunity Act, it seems it's quite very low on his radar. I'm sure once he hears of it, he will cancel it immediately. So it's time for South Africa and African countries to start thinking beyond AGOA. And I'm quite encouraged by President Ramaphosa's administration as emphasis on a bilateral trade and economic deal with the United States. So they are looking at moving away from AGOA and establishing rather a bilateral trade deal with the United States. So I think that's a more pragmatic move.
One final question, Dr. Nkala. It's difficult for somebody to negotiate with Donald Trump. You've seen what he's done with China, over 130% on tariff hikes. China, of course, slapped their countermeasures also when it came to that. He's one of the envoys. Of course, there's many others that President Cyril Ramaphosa is going to try and bring. Is it a classic case, Dr. Nkala, of South Africa can do what they want, cabinet can do what they want, but this is not going to be something that they're going to penetrate from a Donald Trump administration perspective? He's made his mind up. He just doesn't want to have anything to do with South Africa. Is that something that President Ramaphosa and Pretoria now needs to brace themselves for, given that here's a president in Washington that wants absolutely nothing to do with South Africa?
I think perhaps what South Africa can focus on right now is to try and speak to constituencies within the United States that have access to Donald Trump. I think I think there are many businesses in the United States that are still interested in doing business
Mm.
with South Africa. So I think Minister Jonas as his job would include approaching these business communities in the United States to try and then salvage what's left of the relationship. There are also maybe strategic offices that Mr. Jonas can knock their doors on. The Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs has been appointed. I think that's Peter Fem.
Mm,
Uh,
sure.
so he has extensive knowledge of Africa. He has worked in Africa before. So maybe he might be willing to talk to Mr. Jonas. There is also the Bureau of African Affairs in the National Security Council of the United States, who is basically the White House advisor on Africa. So maybe he might be interested in what Mr. Jonas has to say. But it's going to be an uphill task for South Africa because at the moment in the United States Congress, whether it's in the Senate or in the House of Representatives, so South Africa has got no sympathizers there. There are no people who are willing to listen to South Africa's case. So it's going to be quite a challenge for Mr. Jonas.
Uh, Dr. Nkala, always a pleasure having you on here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV. Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That's Dr. Sizo Nkala from the University of Johannesburg Center for Africa-China Studies. After the break, on Friday, activists and many other organizations marched to the union buildings to have gender-based violence declared a state of emergency. I'm going to be speaking to Bulelwa Adonis, who is the spokesperson for Women for Change. To stay tuned.